on creating Drupal-based websites. At that point, honestly, I didn't have clue that I wanted to become a product manager. As most of you like completing your undergraduation would figure out, okay, what you really want to do. That's exactly what my state was at that point. And I knew that in my head, I knew that I didn't want it to be a developer. I wanted to do something different. And I wanted to explore different job families at that point. So business analyst was the closest role that I thought kind of related with my particular strengths, working back in Shrijan Technologies, as I was very much involved with client requirements gathering, writing BRDs, in addition to the regular task of development. So I started thinking about doing my master's, and I applied for a lot of universities in US, got my admits across a bunch of universities, selected University of Florida, Gainesville, did my master's in information systems ops management. At that point, I got my internship at Bank of America as a business analyst. Now you would imagine like probably the dream job came to be true. But while I was working at Bufa, I figured that I wanted to do something more or different than just being a business analyst. And that's where I started exploring a lot about Amazon and companies like Mang, and what kind of role would interest me. So program manager was the closest role at that point, where I could have got like the end-to-end exposure of cross-team collaboration, partnering with development teams, business teams. So that's the role I chose. And I actually entered Amazon at an entry level position as a program manager. And during my time as a program manager, although my title was program manager, I was doing a lot of product management as well. So it was a mix of both program and product functions. And that kind of gave me the first-hand experience that product is where I want my career to be headed. So I kind of gained both the experiences, as at that point I was trying to learn a lot and understand like various job families and what really I can actually bring to the table, right? So I did that, spend like 2-3 years being a program manager, have grown in Amazon from entry level to senior program manager. So it was like two level promotions at that point. And when I became the senior program manager for the middle mile tech vertical in Amazon, I decided I have to do something different now, get inside the tech side of business versus just being in business. And at that point, like I decided, let me explore my career options, whether TPM role makes sense or whether product manager role makes sense. And I figured that I'll start with a TPM role because I wanted to explore my career journey even with SDM role. So a lot of people, you may have heard about engineering managers, right? Like the people who have like a lot of developer reportees reporting into them, and they have the charter of creating, managing a lot of services, backend services, and orchestrating the development, end-to-end development. So SDM was another role that was of interest to me. And as a TPM, I got like first an opportunity to explore both PM role, like product manager role, and SDM role, because I didn't have a product manager support in the projects that I was working as a TPM. And in Amazon or many companies like Amazon, you would see that the roles are sometimes not very well defined or standard across various teams in the company. So at times, like you have to wear multiple hats. And if you get that opportunity, that's actually amazing because you can see and look out for yourself, like what exactly works best for you. So that's exactly what happened with me while I was a TPM working in the Alexa shopping org. And I was trying to like figure out between the two, and product management role was like a very interesting to me because as a product manager, you are like the CEO, like a mini CEO of the product, managing like the end-to-end orchestration, defining the requirements, creating the North Star vision, writing BRD, partnering with the developers, doing cross-team collaboration. So it's a mix of multiple things, right? And that excited me a lot, which kind of triggered me to change my career trajectory towards product management. And since then, I've been really enjoying it. And if I have to look back at my career journey, right, like the baby steps that I took right from my undergrad to my master's to getting into Amazon, and within Amazon, like navigating my journey, making those switches, getting the promotions, I think everything looks like it was planned, but it was not really planned, right? So I think those baby steps really helped me a lot to understand where I want to take my career forward. So that's my career journey so far. And moving forward, I'm also looking to grow my team in Amazon as a product manager lead. So yeah, I mean, if you are somebody looking to change your paths, I think I can definitely share some tips and tricks with you based on what I have learned over the years in my career journey. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about what product manager has to do actually. So as you can see this Venn diagram, right? Like the product manager function is actually an intersection point between multiple verticals, right? Or multiple lines of businesses. There is a tech vertical where the STM sits, the TPM sits. There are developers who are actually coding, right? And then the business side of things is also like one vertical where product manager has to interface. And the business side, when I say business side, what I mean is it could be like legal team, it could be marketing team, it could be your leadership, right? And it could be a mix of tech and business where a product manager needs to literally align and paint the picture of the North Star vision of the product to the leadership, get the alignment, and based on that, orchestrate the development with the tech team, right? So that's where the intersection lies. And sometimes like products like Alexa requires legal approval on like the UX flows because it is actually going to be surfaced to the end customer, right? Who is going to use it on day in, day out basis. So we want to make sure like we are using terminologies that is legal friendly and we have vetted that out. So that's another vertical. It's not always the case that as a product manager, you have to interact with legal or marketing, but depending on your line of business or the kind of product that you're working on, this particular vertical can also be intersected there. Then there is UX, and UX is like consistent across the board. UX is pretty standard, where a product manager needs to outline, like, okay, how the look and feel of the product would look like. Ultimately, the expectation is not that the product manager has to define the mocks of the product that you're building, but the product manager has to partner with a UX designer. So teams have generally UX designers who are more experienced and have subject matter expertise in this area, and they actually come up with like the standard mocks on how the product would look like in front of the end customer. And the product manager has a lot of say in that because ultimately the vision or the feature level vision, like how exactly the feature will interact with the customer. If customer says X, what will be the Y response shown to the customer? That is something which the product manager is defining through the BRD. So product manager has a lot of say even in the mocks and has to partner heavily with the UX designer throughout the life cycle of creating mocks. And this is not like a quick process. It takes time. So like in companies like Amazon, it takes months to create mocks, right? So maybe like a high level, high fidelity mock is where we start with. And based on like how the skeleton looks like, it goes even further into low fidelity mocks, which then gets used by the developers as they do the front end development, right? So that's pretty much the intersection. So what I'm trying to explain here with this Venn diagram is product manager has to intersect and talk to a lot of teams, right? Not just their own job, because ultimately like they are coming up with a vision, they're defining the BRD, but as a CEO, just imagine if you're running a startup, right? And you have a set of features that you're building for your startup in very early stage. You kind of like a product manager, right? And trying to define like the vision of the company, partnering with tech, partnering with legal, HR, and other teams to make the vision turn into a reality, right? That's exactly what the product manager is doing. So, yep, it would be an intersection between all these job families. Now let's move on to the responsibilities. So Nitish, if you can move to the next slide. Okay, so responsibilities of a product manager. This is very interesting. This is something I've figured out over time, and you will find it pretty standard across all companies and all kind of products that you work on. So artifact writing is a must-have for a product manager, no matter which company you work for. So, like one thing that you would observe going into companies like Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft or any other companies like the FANG companies, that you'll have to write a ton of documents as a product manager, right? The very first document that a product manager generally writes is the PRFAQ, which is like the press release document, and it kind of defines like the vision of like how the product would evolve over time, right? Like, have you thought through working backwards from the customer? Like, if you have to publish an article in the news, right? Like, that is basically your press release, right? That's what PR is doing. And then FAQs is like you have customer FAQs, you have internal FAQs, and you have developer FAQs. It could be a mix of multiple things, but basically answering like, have you thought through, like, does this product make sense to be built, right? Have you thought through the matrix? Have you thought through what the impact we are creating? What is the revenue that this product would generate, right? Monetary component is also important here in terms of bringing value to the business. And then your KPIs, which is your key performance indicators, mocks, like how the product would look like. So that is what PRFAQ is. And PR is generally like a one pager, and it can go a little bit over one pager, but generally it's recommended under one page. And then your FAQs are after that. This document is generally like standard 6 pages in companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Facebook. And then after that, like if you have more content to add, generally we do appendices. So that's PRFAQ. That's the very first document that one writes for any product. And then once you get an approval from leadership, because writing a PRFAQ is one thing, but then taking feedback from a larger group, right? Like getting approval from various teams, leadership is another thing. So that is another cycle that happens after writing the PRFAQ. And it also takes a lot of time, right? So it could take weeks, it could take a couple of months, depending on the org that you are in. And then once the PRFAQ is approved, pretty much the org is aligned in building this product, right? And the next step would be defining like a North Star vision, or writing a BRD. Sometimes people skip North Star vision, but the difference between North Star vision and PRFAQ is that the North Star vision goes further deeper, like how will the product evolve in the next 3 years. That's exactly what North Star vision is doing. It's more like a strategy document with like a future looking outlook, and like longer term how the product would evolve, and what are the additional features that the product will have, besides the MVP that is being built, right? And MVP, like I think you guys might be familiar with the MVP term if you're doing your MBA, or you are already a product manager, right? So MVP is like a minimal viable product. So for building anything, you need to have like an MVP first. Sometimes people use term called MLP, which is minimum lovable product. I think MVP is like the bare minimal version of a product, but MLP is more like, okay, what is the bare minimal version which the customers would absolutely love, right? So MLP and MVP has like a thin line difference. And generally, people prefer to have like an MLP release first. But sometimes, depending on the headcount the product has been allocated, you can do an MVP release first and then later on add more features. So North Star Vision talks about your MVP, MLP, and then it goes even deeper into, okay, how the product would evolve over time, right? In the next 3 years or 5 years. And then BRD, I think most of you guys might be familiar with this, but BRD is more like a business requirements document where literally the product manager has to explain, like, as a user X, this is what I want for the product, right? Like as a user X, I want to see Y. As a user Alice, I want to see Z, right? So that is what BRD is doing. It is written working backwards from your various user types. So your user type could be, let's say, your end user. For example, if you're building like an operational product, right, where internal company users are also going to use the product, and then we also have like the end users who are actually going to leverage the product, right? So your BRD could be split by your end users and the internal users, right? Depending on the user types, you'll have to like split your BRD. And then in the BRD, you even like go deeper into like system level requirements, where let's say if you want to have like a feedback loop to the system to learn something and apply machine learning at a later point. So that's also something which gets captured into the BRD. So it goes deeper into the requirements. This artifact, the reason we write this artifact is because we want to share this information with the development team who's actually going to use it as a working backwards document when they have to think about like a system level design plan, right? Like how the tech project plan would look like, what is the design that they have to go with, high level tech design or the low level design. BRD is what they use. So BRD is the very first thing that the developers would ask for before they actually start working on the project. So right after like PRFAQ or North Star Vision, it's very important to write a BRD because if we don't have a BRD, your development team will be blocked. So that's another important key artifact. Besides artifacts, right, I'd also like to touch upon like heavy cross-team collaboration with the product manager has to do. So cross-team collaboration would happen. Just imagine the Venn diagram I was showing before in the prior slide. Since the product manager has to interface and interact with so many verticals, which is where your cross-team collaboration resides, right? Like as a PM, you have to interact with the UX designer, probably the broader UX team. So that's one level of cross-team collaboration. Then let's say you have to interact with the development team to track and understand the pulse of how your project is evolving, right? Or the features are being developed. That's another touch point. And in that particular touch point, the product manager is actually talking to not just the developers, but also the STM and the TPMs. And I'll be covering like the difference between TPM, PM, PMT, and whatnot, like in the next few slides. But just to tell you, like a TPM is more like a program manager role on the tech side of the job family. And they are kind of like understanding, okay, what are the dependencies across different tech teams? Because in companies like Amazon or any big tech companies, you will see like there's so many teams working on different services. And there are times, or there are a lot of times when a product that you're working has dependency on not just one tech team, but multiple tech teams, and which is where your TPM adds the most value. So that's one touch point, second touch point for product manager role. Then your last touch point is your business. So business, when I say that, it could be your leadership team because you have to provide status update to the leadership team on how the product is being built, right? So just imagine if in January you had a review, right, with your leadership this year, for example, just making it up, and showed a PRFAQ doc, right? This is the product is being built. This is how it's going to look like over time. And you got a stamp approval on that, and you already have a BRD as well, then you'll have to track it, right? Like, let's say you're projecting to build the product by end of this year. You want to have like a touch point around, okay, what's the status of the project every month, right? Or every 2 weeks, and then report that status back to leadership, either through like doc reviews like MBR, so monthly business review or quarterly business review, or it could be even like a status update or a mix of both. So every company has like their own way of doing it. But that's another touch point of cross-team collaboration. And then Drive leadership alignment falls under the same umbrella there. The next is Drive launch strategy and launch. So as the product gets closer to the launch date, it's important to have like a launch strategy outlined. I'd say ahead of the launch, it's important to have the launch strategy outlined, which kind of talks about, okay, how exactly are you going to make the product go live in front of the customers, right? So for instance, let's say you're building a global product, right? You'll first start with one region, right? Like let's say India region. You want to launch specific to, let's say, the South region in India first, right? Even in India, like you can sub-bucket it. And then you want to test it, let's say, with 100 customers or 200 customers. So you'll run like a web lab or something like that to make sure like only those set of customers or that particular number of customers get the visibility of the product so that you can get an early feedback before scaling it to the broader audience, right? So that's exactly what launch strategy is. And then even it talks about like the timeline of dialing up, right? So for instance, in companies like Amazon, what we do is we decide, okay, X date is when we want to go live, and we prepare our web lab accordingly. And then let's say we want to dial up to 60% of the customer base in 3 weeks or 2 weeks post launch. That is a part of your launch strategy, right? And when do you want to go up to 100%? So that's what launch strategy is. And then KPIs is your key performance indicators, right? So As a part of launch, you're measuring some metrics to understand whether your product launch is successful or not. And those KPIs will also be measured even after your product launch is successful, right? Because you want to keep a pulse of your matrix and monitor anomalies, right? So that corrections could be made. So KPIs is defined well ahead during the PRFAQ stage itself, or it could also be like defined before your launch strategy is outlined, right? If let's say you need some time to define your KPIs, but ultimately, like leadership feedback is also generally taken on KPIs as a part of your doc reviews, because ultimately even they would have information about, okay, these are the success metrics, and based on that, like they're giving approval. So KPIs is definitely a must have, because without that you won't really know whether your product launch is successful or not. So that's measure KPIs. Then your iterate is new feature releases, right? Because if you recall, like I was talking about MVP and MLP, right? So as you're thinking about launching a product, you're doing like either an MVP or an MLP. And then after that, you have to iterate the features, right? So for instance, you released with feature one or feature two, which is your MLP. That's absolutely needed, bare minimum functionality to launch the product. But then you also have like feature three, feature four, feature five, feature six, and so on and so forth that you want to add to the product, but that wasn't really factored into your MLP/MVP. What you would do is after the release, after measuring the KPIs, the iteration could be done right in the next cycle. So that's what iterate means. So that's pretty much the responsibilities of a product manager. Um, Nitish, if you can move to the next slide, I can talk about some skill sets which are needed to be a good product manager. Cool. So these are like the required skill sets of a product manager. And if you think about it, right, I think it's a chicken and egg problem, because for people who do not have like relevant industry experience, they need to gain that experience, right? So an MBA is generally like preferred if you want to enter into a product manager job family right after your college, or if you don't have an MBA, that's fine. I don't have an MBA, right? I have a master's in ISOM, Information Systems Ops Management. So if you don't have one, that's okay, but you need to have some experience, right? So either you start off as a BA, or you start off as a program manager, try to gain that experience of product management side, and then ultimately, eventually enter into that job family, right? So that is one way of doing it, because generally, like as a product manager, it is expected that you know doc writing, you know effective communication, you have some information about system design, because ultimately you have to collaborate with developers to turn your product vision into a reality, right? And it's also important that as a product manager you have some basic data visualization and data analytics skill set, right? And the reason it is important is because you want to be able to measure like anomalies, you want to be able to measure different data points to understand like if you want to make changes to your product, right? And no means by no means I mean that you have to write like SQL. If you are a product manager, like you will generally have access to business analysts, BIEs, but some orgs within like big tech companies like Amazon will give you access to BIEs and BAs, but not every team will have that luxury, right? So sometimes like you'll have to roll up your sleeves, do your own data visualization. And even if you rely on a BA or BIA, right, it's really important to understand what they're doing, what goes into the back end, right? That's how like you can give them feedback, because ultimately you know the product more than anybody else, right? As a product manager, being the CEO here. So data visualization skill set is very important. Doc writing, effective communication, system design. These are like the top key skill sets in any tech companies you go. Then besides that, like if you have relevant experience, right? For instance, you're already like working as, let's say, a program manager or a product manager in a small company, and you want to apply to a big tech company, you already have some experience to show, right? Which is what these companies are looking for. Or if you don't have like the industry experience, but you have an MBA, that's also relevant experience, right? Because in an MBA course, you're getting exposure to all the key skill sets about a product manager, right? You know about finance vertical, you know about business, and you are having like practical projects through your course. So that's definitely a great experience to have, and companies value that, right? But if you're a starter and don't have either of the two above, yeah, try to gain that experience through being in a non-product manager job family. Either you enter as a business analyst or you enter as a program manager, or you can be a developer but do like a stretch assignment where you want to experience like the product side of things, but that will be an added responsibility in addition to your daily job, right? So that's another area. Moving on to the next slide. Okay. So I did mention about this, and I would like to heavily focus on this now. So PM is an overloaded term, right? Like if you see like the job description across different companies for a product manager role, it's not very standard, right? And if you enter in companies like Amazon, Amazon has even like a mixed complex terminology for a PM term. So PM could be a program manager, it could be a technical program manager, it could be a product manager, right? Like you can have different PM role types, and it can vary across different companies as well. Some companies, they don't do like so much segregation. For example, Microsoft says is product manager. However, if you go into Amazon, you will see like they have product manager non-tech and they have product manager tech. So product manager non-tech is more like you're not expected to have like a system design skill set, and by system design I mean like high level design skill set. But as a PMP, since they apply the tech band next to your role, it's important to have like a system design skill set, and they ask those questions in the interview also. So that's the difference between product manager non-tech and product manager tech. And companies like Microsoft has it pretty standard, which is product manager. Sometimes they even use program manager, and the program manager is doing both product management and program management. But I can explain to you like the thin line difference between these terminologies. So product manager is the CEO of the product, right? Similar to what I just explained couple of slides back, collaborates with dev, UX, business, marketing, legal, and other teams. So for example, like a classic product feature, add to cart, right? So you'll have one product manager for that add to cart feature. And then if you want to add more features to that product add to cart, this product manager is driving that vision. So more like a CEO of the product. Then comes your technical program manager. This is also an interesting role for people like who want to experience like the breadth of things. The way I differentiate product manager and TPM is product manager goes deeper into the product, right? More like a research role. On the product side, right? And the technical program manager role is not going deeper into one thing, but it's more like heavy cross team collaboration across different verticals, tech verticals, business verticals. And what they do is they work back from the BRD to help like collaborate the creation of a high level design in partnership with developers, then creates like a tech project plan. So for instance, if I've given a BRD to a TPM, right, what they would do is they'll probably have a couple of sessions with me and try to clarify the requirements, make sure they're fully aligned. They'll also bring their developers to those calls. And then once that alignment is locked, what they do is they create like a plan, which is the tech project plan, in parallel to the design document that they are creating. And that tech project plan kind of outlines, okay, how the delivery would look like. So what are the first set of features that they will be building? How will that cycle look like? What date when the launch can be executed, right? Or when will the dev testing be done? The code completion will be done. So that is what the TPM is trying to outline. And then in addition to that, the project plan is also capturing dependencies. So for instance, if your product has dependencies on three tech teams, right? Not just one, but three tech teams. And these three tech teams are sitting in different under different directors, right? Like one tech team is managed by a different org altogether. For example, Alexa, right? In Alexa, like you will see a lot of orgs like Alexa Shopping, Alexa News, Alexa Search, and whatnot. And let's say this product is being built under Alexa Shopping, but has dependencies on Alexa Search, Alexa News. Then the TPM would actually make sure like those dependencies are outlined and partner with TPM on these different orgs to make sure those dependencies can be removed or can be met, right? So that's what the TPM is doing, heavy cross team collaboration, which is where, like, when I say it's a breadth role, like you don't go more into the research side of the product, it's a breadth role. What I really mean is heavy cross team collaboration. Then you have your program manager role, which is the business version of your TPM role. So, not on the tech side, but heavily on the business side. So, companies like Amazon have just business verticals as well, right? Like supply chain org, where you have just like operations, you're dealing with ops leaders sitting in various sites because you have to manage the supply chain, right? Same with Flipkart, right? They'll have a lot of warehouses where they store their inventory, and there is a site lead or GM sitting there, and they're managing the workflow, making sure the orders are dispatched timely to the customer, right? And you'll have like a corporate vertical who is sitting like in some office, let's say in Bangalore, and they are coordinating with these people across Pune, across Mumbai, like wherever the warehouses are there. And these people are generally program managers who are actually like collaborating with these different site leads and even the tech side of the business, right? To turn a project plan into a reality and then launch that across these different site types. So in this example, program manager is doing that. Similarly, like you'll have multiple business verticals where program manager is more like the business version of your TPM. So TPM is generally like big if the project is super technical, where you have to have like a lot of dev team interaction. You have to create like a HLD, you have to create like a dev plan. When will the code completion be done? When you have to start the testing? When we can have an expected release? That is where TPM is involved. But if it's a heavy business role where it's more about already a built product which needs to be launched through a project plan, PM can actually take care of that instead of involving a TPM in this case. So that's the difference between the three roles. Salary wise, also, the companies differentiate in this particular role terminologies. For instance, like program manager being like the non-tech um, PM, like job family, it's generally like the starting PM salary would be from the program manager side. Then TPM and product manager would make somewhere closer because they are dealing on the tech side as well as on the business side, right? So that's how like the structure looks like, and which is where I say it, PM is an overloaded term. Um, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so how to get started? Um, for starters, like learn about product management. There are a lot of books out there, so you can have like cracking the PM interview is one. A lot of people read that, so I'd highly recommend that. Then you have inspired how to create products customers love and like. That's another one. And then there's one YouTube channel that I follow a lot, which is Product School. Um, Generally, what happens in that channel is like product managers across different companies like Amazon, Google, even director level audience come and talk about their journeys and talk about what it is about building a product, right? Learnings that they have had through their career, talks about basic skill sets that are needed. So Product School is definitely one YouTube channel that I would must recommend. Like if you haven't really subscribed to it, please do. It has a lot of good content. So you'll learn a lot about product management from that channel. And then for starters, like I said, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? Because generally, like people look out for an MBA or relevant experience is preferred. So business analyst could be a good starting point, or program manager could be a good starting point. Sometimes even like developers are interested in turning into a product manager, right? Depending on their experiences in their career. So I would say if you have such a journey, I would recommend a TPM role as a first starting point, because as a TPM, it's a more technical role, and as a developer you're already coding, right? So you have that technical skill set. So TPM will give you some exposure to cross team collaboration. It will give you exposure to writing updates, writing MBR, like monthly business requirements, monthly business review documents. You will as a TPM, you will interface heavily with the product manager, with leadership. So you will gain that skill set as a TPM, and you already know like interaction with developers because you were a developer, right? So TPM will be a sweet spot where You will not have like so much to absorb all at once, but it will be like baby step, good foundational step to move towards a product role, because product would go more deeper into the business side of things, not just tech but even business side of things, but TPM will be more on the tech side. So TPM could be a good like starting point if you are a developer and want to switch to a product manager role. um, I think that's pretty much it, and I would love to open up for any Q&A questions that you guys have for me.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the session. And I think the session was very, very much insightful. And also, I can see people are writing in the chat box. I can see the questions are coming in the chat box. One question we have already got by Tanvi Sangvi, and her question is, how can I go for this product manager as I'm pursuing electrical engineering now?
Okay. And Tanvi, you're pursuing your electric BTech, right? I think yes. Okay. So I would recommend, if you are doing electrical engineering, you can either get inside like you can think about doing an MBA, right? That's one particular path that you can take if you haven't already thought about an MBA. And the reason I say MBA is because as an electrical engineering course, you are getting exposure to certain skill set, right? Which is different from a product manager skill set, because a product management will be more on the software side of things, right? Unless you already have like tech courses. For example, if you are already having like coding courses like Java, C Sharp, or something along those lines, you'll have some tech experience already. But if not, I would say uh, go with an MBA route, because MBA will give you some exposure about the business skill set also, and it can give you like a good exposure to. Okay, you don't have technical background exposure, so okay, got it. Yeah, so I think MBA will be a good exposure. Tanvi, the other could be doing a master's if you don't want to do an MBA, right? And because generally with MBA, what happens is if you're applying for an MBA, especially for colleges in US, you need to have some experience. People look out for that, right? When you create your SOP and submit that. I would say even masters could be a good sweet spot where you get a mix of both tech and business skill set. So like MIS kind of a course, which is Management Information System, or ISOM. It will give you like a mix of skill set between both development or the tech skill set and the business skill set, which will be a suitable, skill set to have in terms of transitioning to a product role. So that's one way. The other way could be like you can take some courses offline outside your undergrad that you're studying in electrical engineering, and try to gain skill set about development, even like the business skill set, right? Like marketing. For example, you can pursue a digital marketing internship. There are a lot of startups who look out for digital marketing candidates, right? Where you need to, for example, there is a YouTube channel called Tech Takshila. I and a group of two people run that channel, and we are in constant need of digital marketing interns. And what that person generally does is they actually like look out for, okay, how can I increase the subscriber base, right? Or what is the content that the audience is generally looking out for? How can we best offer that? So that's what digital marketing intern is doing, promoting information on Facebook and other social media channels. So that's a good exposure to have. So you can look for internships like that as well, outside your regular undergrad, and you will be gaining a ton of experience from there, right? So that's another way. And then you can actually put that experience in your resume, and then based on that you can apply. You can maybe get into a startup or even like a medium sized firm, or even big tech firm, if you get that opportunity, right? Either as a business analyst or even a program manager, because for product manager I think they'll look out for experience. So unless you're able to gain that through your undergrad, like you can actually try out these different things, right? And then MBA or masters is another option. So depending on what you really want, like if you're interested in pursuing like further studies, masters or MBA will be great. But if you are not like interested in pursuing further studies, I would say like try to gain internship experience right now, like while you're doing your undergrad in the areas where you want to do job, for example product management. So try to gain both the tech side of skill set and the business side of skill set. So business could be your marketing, driving like the vision of the product, right? So you can partner with a startup, and generally like startups which are brand new and they're just starting out, they are always in need of help, right? So you can be that helping hand in that case and put that star in your resume, right? And that could be take you a long way. So yeah, that's how I'd approach it. Okay, and you're saying Nitish has a question: which level is product manager in Amazon, and what's the approx pay scale? Okay, so product manager, like they are at all levels, right? So generally what I've seen is it starts at an L5 level, which is like one level above the entry level. So your entry is generally an L4 level in Amazon, and then you have L5, you have L6, L7. Your L5 is generally your product manager 2, similar to software development engineering 2. And then your L6 is your senior product manager. And then your L7 becomes your senior manager, who is having a lot of product manager ICs working under them. And then L8 is your director, and then you have VP, SVP, and then the CEO, right? So that's how the leveling looks like Amazon. From a pay scale perspective, I think you can get that information on Glassdoor or even levels.fii, right? So generally, like in US, product managers make between like 200 to 300K USD if we talk about like a senior product manager role. And depending on like the number of years of experience you have as a senior product manager, it can range like that. PM2 could be somewhere between 150K USD to 250K USD, again depending on your level of experience. Also, like within the company, how you're performing, like every year like they evaluate your performance, and based on that like they give you like a rating, right, which is very internal to the company. And according to that rating, like your pay structure is refined every year. For example, if you exceed expectations and you're a top tier in the company, you'll actually land into the high range of the pay band. And if like over the 2 years or 3 years you continuously gain like a top tier rating, you will get that high level pay band for your particular level. So that's how like the salary structure is in India. If I recall, it will be somewhere between 50 lakhs to 70 lakhs for a senior product manager role. And likewise for a PM2, it would be somewhere between 30 to 50. But I think you'll get the most up-to-date information on Glassdoor or levels.fii. Okay, I see there's another question. Um, when we are talking about a product here, it is not necessarily a physical product, but a technical product as well. Like at one point, it was mentioned add to cart as a product. So, how is managing a physical product different from managing a tech product? Are technical skills a must for managing a tech product? Yes. So, physical products are different from tech products, right? And as you know, most of the things are going digital. So, the tech product is a more relevant job family in terms of standard across different companies, right? As you're applying. So I would say definitely tech skill set is needed. If you ask me, like, am I using the tech skill set day in, day out? Then my answer will be no, right? Because I'm not coding day in, day out. Rather, I have to interact with the developers, right? So it's important to have like some system design skill set, because think about it, right? Like if you're creating a BRD, right, and you have development team who's actually going to work backwards from it and create like a system design document, they need your feedback, right? Like, does it make sense, right? Architecturally, they'll come to you with the document. It's not that they are heavily dependent on you for the feedback. But if you are a part of that discussion, you want to contribute, right, somehow, or at least understand how the dev plan would look like. So that is where the thin line is, and you would need to know at least some high level system design skill set so that you can contribute to those discussions and understand how the plan is being created. So that's like one area. And then the other area is measuring KPIs, right? So if you think about doc writing is the bread and butter for product manager. Talking to developers is also part of it, which is where your system design skill set will land. But then after launching, you have to measure metrics, right? How the product would evolve. Is it successful? Are there any anomalies? Do you have to make any improvements? If you have to do all of that, right, you need to have like some visualization skill set. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to write SQL queries and build the dashboard yourself, but it would be like that you will have access to BAs or BIs who will do that for you. But imagine that you have to interact with a BA, right? And paint the picture that this is the dashboard that I want to have to measure my KPIs, to track my success rate, to track my failure rate. Um, you want to be able to make sure like the logic being incorporated by the BIE or the BA is as per your vision, right, or as per your thinking of how ideally the KPI should be tracked. So if you have that skill set, it's an excellent skill set to have, right? Because you can give feedback to your BIs, BAs, and if they build something, you can analyze that, right? Or you can even go back and look at their code and understand, is this the information that you need, right? Or something else you need in addition to what they've built, right? I've seen a lot of people in Amazon or big tech companies who don't have SQL skill sets, right? And they are good product managers. But when it comes to measuring KPIs, the skill set is definitely needed. And I've heard from BIs and BAs, right? And you'll see that, right? Like that's their pain point. If you be in their shoes, they will want you to be able to understand like the tech side of things also, right? And if you're doing that, you're earning trust with them. You're actually becoming an excellent product manager by doing that. So I would say like having a mix of those two skill sets is definitely needed. But one thing that you cannot skip is doc writing and effective communication, because that's an absolute must have for being a product manager. I don't think any companies like at least big tech companies would let you not write documents. Like every product manager role will have like some kind of doc writing, some kind of leadership alignment, cross team collaboration. So those two would be like the necessary must have. But then companies also, like if you look into their job requirements when you apply for that company, one of the interview loop consists of measuring your tech skill set, right? So in Amazon, like I said, there is a PMT role, which is a product manager tech role, and there is a non-tech product manager role. And if you're applying for a product manager tech role, one of your interview loops will be tech. So you can have like some like an SDM taking your interview. So SDM is your software development manager who was actually an engineer, right? Like let's say a couple of years back and became a SDM and now has a team of developers. So that person will come from a tech mindset, right? And they will ask you like a tech system design question. Like let's say design like a system for recommending content on Prime Video, right? Um, Personalized content on Prime Video, something like that. So if you have to design that, how would you do that? Like, would you say, no, I cannot design it? That will be a bad impression, right? So you will have such a question. And generally you will have to clear that, right? So that's what PMP role will comprise of. But then if you don't want to be in the tech side of things, you can apply for a non-tech product manager role where they won't really ask you like a tech question, like a system design or a data analytics question. It would be heavily focused on, let's say, your experience. On Amazon, it's more like leadership principles, right? So it has like 14 plus leadership principles. So it will focus on that, right? Like earn trust, deliver results. Tell me about a time when you did X. Tell me about a time when you did Y, or tell me about a time when you had to manage like an earn trust issue with a colleague of yours, right? While building a Y product, something like that. So these kind of questions generally come up in the interview, which are non-tech. But then on the tech side, it goes into system design and SQL level skills. So depending on what kind of job you're applying for, like you'll have to like check into the requirements. Are they looking for the tech skill set or not, right? And if it's not like a tech skill set, you can probably skip that. But generally, like if you are going into software companies, big tech companies, and going to be interfacing with developers, expect a system design question. So yeah, does that answer your question, Prashant? I see another question. If someone from non-tech wants to start learning coding, what is the process? How to start? Okay, so if somebody from non-tech wants to start coding, um, I would say like, I mean, you don't have to learn coding, right? Like if you want to be a product manager, right? You nobody will ask you to code in Java or nobody will ask you to code in C sharp, right? What you really want to start is learning system design. So channels like Tech Takshila, Gaurav Sen is another channel. It has a huge subscriber base. My channel is Tech Takshila, so I'll say that. And then you can find many more channels where you can learn about basic system design, which talks about okay how to design a Netflix system or a Facebook feed feature, right? Or news feed feature or something along those lines. And then probably like some interview questions also. So that is one place you can do. And then for coding, like you can find many resources online, like you'll have to just Google it. But I don't think you really need like coding skill set if you are going into like a product manager job family, right? Unless you really want to switch to being a developer, that is where you need to learn Java or other languages, right? Or even technologies. So you can join some institute if you are in college. Every college generally has some institutes after college, right? So if you find some institutes, good institutes who teach you coding, you can do that because that will be more like a policing mechanism because they will give you assignments and they will even measure if you're doing the project correctly or not on the tech side of things, right? But that goes more into the development job family, not on the product job family. So I won't really recommend coding if you ask me, if you want to make a switch to a product manager job family. Okay, Prashant has a comment. Okay, yeah, you need tech skill set, but nobody will ask you like a Java question in an interview. You won't have to code. That's generally being asked to software developers. So if you really want to learn it, you can start with maybe learning OOPS concepts first. Understand how even data structures, right? You can do that, and then system design would be a must-have, right? So I don't think you should skip that. Coding, you can still you can do it from W3 schools. Like you can have tutorials point is a one website, W3 schools is another one from where you can learn like some tech skill set, even SQL skill set, they talk about both basic and advanced SQL. So that's another place that you can go to for learning coding skill set. Any more questions? Okay, perfect. I'm glad it answered your question. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. What type of customer research do you conduct and how often? Um, Great question. So in companies like Amazon, like generally, like there's customer discovery sessions. What we do is we involve like a large set of stakeholders, talk about, for example, like there's a product, right, that we're building uh, on Alexa, for example, right? And you've built like an MVP and you want to think about new features or what things that can be done differently, right? So customer discovery sessions are generally organized for that. You don't really talk to an end customer for that. What you do is you interact with a lot of Amazon employees, right? And they are your stakeholders generally, and um, generally, like, you can do like a 2 hour session or a 1 hour session, and you start talking about what worked well, what did not work well. uh, how would you envision this UX to look like, right? What other features that you would like to have, right? So there is generally a structure that is defined in those customer discovery sessions, and you nominate like one or two people who start uh, like playing that role of the customer, and they walk you through the different aspects of the product, which as a product manager you can think through. And then you have other people who can chime in with their opinion or feedback as well, which is what you collect in your customer discovery session. That is super helpful when it comes to feature iteration. But when it comes to creating like brand new products, there's something that you have to think about based on data, right? So, for instance, for example, right, I'll just throw an example here. In Amazon, there, like, if you manage the supply chain side of the business, right, like you're delivering packages to the customers, there will be a reverse logistics side also, right? So, this is a natural product that you want to have, right? And you'll always have like from the get go of things, from the very start of things. But then, if you see, like, for example, taking this example, right, like if you want to create like a product called cancellation product, right, where you want to allow customers to cancel their packages, in transit packages, after placing order, because they changed their mind or they figured out like a place where they can get a better deal, right, something along those lines. um, how would you know that you want to build that feature, right? So one way of knowing that is, uh, like, are you seeing many returns, right? Like, and generally, like, when does the customer start like talking about returns? Do they call the CS, customer service agents, right, after placing order, or they generally wait for their order to arrive? Like, what is that data segregation looks like, right? And there will be more components that you will look into, so globally, like how it would change. Based on that, you will determine if this feature is value added for Amazon as a company, right? And then there needs to be further analysis conducted in terms of savings, right? Like, if you launch this product, is it like value for money for customers and for the company, right? So you have to do that financial assessment, and then you partner with your financial analysts, who to vet those data points to make sure like you've vetted those things, and then based on that you write a PRFAQ, right? Because you have now like some data around building a feature which is going to be value added for the company, and then you start painting that vision and then getting leadership alignment for that. But generally, like in big tech companies, most of the times what happens is like, you will have like OP discussions. So like, it's OP discussions are more like, next year, what are the key themes that the org needs to work on, right? For example, increasing efficiency, right, or reducing labor hours, in terms of, for example, the supply chain business, right? So, for example, you want to reduce labor hours in that business as one theme. And when I say labor hours, what I mean is like the people who spend time in moving the packages in these, sitting in various warehouses, like how can they increase their productivity? So that's one theme that you want to work on. Then you can work on improving the performance, right? So for instance, you want to increase the delivery time for the package to arrive to the customer's doorstep. For example, it's a 2-day delivery and you want to make it to a 1-day delivery, right? That's one thing. Then you can have other themes also. So generally the themes are decided at a higher level, and then based on that there are projects which are outlined, right? Like, what are the various products that could be built, what are the improvements that could be made, and based on that, like, the projects are determined for next year. So that's how like the big tech companies generally work. And then you have even forums like, where you can pitch the innovative juices that comes in terms of, okay, these are the products that could be built, which is where like people get exposure to present their ideas in front of the broader panel and get approval. For example, this cancellation feature, right? That example that I just made up. And then in startups, like, you will get even more hands-on experience in terms of that, because um, um, at that point, like as a startup, like it's trying to evolve, right? It's trying to launch its bare minimal version and then think about, okay, what are the next set of things I want to build. So for example, a startup called Charger, right? I've invested in that startup. I'm an angel investor as well. Charger, like they are actually building the charging infrastructure in Bangalore. Some of you guys may have heard of that. As they're doing that, there is a bare minimal feature that they want to build, right? A bare minimal product that they want to build. But then in the next few years, they want to evolve it, right? Let's say they want to launch in Mumbai, they want to launch in Delhi and whatnot, right? So which is where you'd want to get more like hands-on in terms of customer response, right? Like how the customers are actually interacting with your charging infrastructure. That's the discovery mechanism that you can use. Understand, like, is your product lacking something? You want to build something new. So that's another way. But in big tech companies, generally we run beta study also. For example, we have painted like a vision of, okay, this is the product we want to build. We run a beta study where it could be some external customers, some internal customers also, like 100 or 1,000 customers, and they give feedback while interacting with the product, right? And in that particular course of action, like you can even get data points around, okay, what's the next set of features I want to build, right? So there are multiple mechanisms, discovery mechanism, beta launches, and in startup, like you can directly interface with the customers, right? Like as your startup is new. So that's how their customer research would work. And in every aspect, like you'll have to use data.